This edition of Around the Huddle for March 28th will continue right after this.
The following editorial is the personal opinion of the producer. It does not necessarily reflect the opinion of this station, the University of Texas at Austin, the UT System Board of Regents, or the Texas Student Media Board of Operating Trustees. KVRX encourages public comment on this editorial. Please contact the program director of the station for more information.
You are listening to KVRX Austin. Thank you for tuning in. It is the final week of March, and we are coming to you live on both KVRX and Texas Student Television, which is bringing you 168 straight hours of live on-air content during their 24/7 program. Alongside Brad Kellner and guest host Corey Schneider, I'm Blake Carter. Gentlemen, there's been a lot of hustle and bustle during the station around 24/7. Have you been involved in anything so far?
I have not been involved. I've been volunteering, so I've been behind the scenes, but I think it's really great how this is going on right now, and fundraiser, it's a good time to get involved, so I think it's really great.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's great for Texas Student Media, and it's a lot of fun. There's been a lot of good programming on TSTV this week.
They need to raise money to stay on the air. They are, in fact, the only FCC licensed radio TV station in America that is completely student-run, so I completely applaud their efforts. Coming up tonight's episode, our brackets may be crumpled, shredded, spat on, and burned, but probably from the frustration, but there's still a tournament, and the Sweet 16 has already begun. We'll update and preview all of the weekend's games and give you our picks as to who heads to the Georgia Dome next week, and in fact, Marquette and Miami are currently underway. Also, we'll have the Miami Heat's 27-game winning streak, and we'll give you info on their loss to the Chicago Bulls last night. Can we consider the Bulls a threat in the Eastern Conference, if not the league? Plus, with opening day in baseball on the horizon, we'll preview each division to see which teams have the best shot at winning their divisions, along with league MVPs and possible teams who may have a breakout year. All that, plus a recap of Texas Longhorns baseball and softball coming up next on Around the Huddle. But first, we have an announcement from Mr. Brad Kellner.
Hey, guys. Today is my dad's 50th birthday. Mark, I know you're listening. I appreciate your support, and I hope you're having a great day. The big 5-0, but I wanted to let you know over the air that your gift for turning 50 is you and I will be going to Philadelphia in May to the NCAA Lacrosse Championships. So Mom and I thought it was a good idea to say this over the air, but happy birthday. It'll be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it, and I will see you very soon.
Your dad's a big lacrosse fan. That's what you told me.
He played lacrosse at UT here a long time ago, so I'm sure he likes me saying that. But,
Mark, right?
Mark, yes.
Mark, happy 50th birthday, Mark. We appreciate your support in listening to KVRX. Also, if you're listening and you would like to send us an email, the email is aroundthehuddle, KVRX@gmail.com. That number, once again, is aroundthehuddle, KVRX@gmail.com. Like I said, we have a lot of topics to go to, so let's get to them. We'll begin tonight on a serious note, as on Monday, the Daily Texan reported that former women's track and field coach Bev Kearney filed a complaint against the University of Texas in which she says she was, quote, subjected to a severely hostile work environment and constructively discharged by forcing her to resign in lieu of being fired because of her race, color, and gender, end quote. The complaint was filed under the Texas Workforce Commission, which gives the TWC about 6 months to review the complaint and decide whether or not Kearney can sue not just the athletic department, but possibly the entire university. Fellas, it's a tough situation, and it's going to go down really tough for either of these people. So let me ask you guys, where's this situation going from here?
I mean, it can't be good. Like, publicity like this for the university just can't be good in any way. We don't really know the full details of the allegations, so we'll have to see which way this goes. But regardless, the publicity, the bad representation in the media is not going to be good for the Longhorns.
Yeah, there's been a lot going on between coaches and just a lot of scandals with Major Applewhite earlier this year and now this. I read that Bev Kearney admitted to, I believe, her boss, the athletic director, or one of the athletic directors, that she had a relationship with a student a long time ago, or early 2000s, I believe, and that she was basically put on a leave of absence, and then just abruptly she was fired. So, yeah, that's where all the claims come from. But it's a very, very weird situation. Once again, not good for UT Austin and the publicity for the athletic programs, but she might have a case. I mean, it was their firing, looking into the details, it was very abrupt. It seemed like what she did not deserve just to be let go. I mean, she had won in her tenure here, she'd won 6 track national championships at UT. So those kind of coaches don't get fired just randomly like that.
Yeah, the bigger they are, the harder they fall, especially with an encounter like this. In the complaint, there was a couple of letters out in 2004 where Kearney wrote to athletic director DeLoss Dodds, and it was about a friction between Kearney and Bubba Thornton, who is the men's track and field coach. In the letters obtained by the Texan, Kearney alleges Thornton of offering her a job at a different school, and they would speak openly about Bubba Thornton becoming the men's and women's track and field head coach. So there's a lot of rift between both Bubba Thornton and Bev Kearney. And I wouldn't say that that's the main reason that Bev Kearney is filing this complaint. She's filing because, let's see, I'm going to look up real quick the reasons as to why. Here's why. The Daily Texan. It says she was harassed and her complaints were ignored by administrators. She was not given salary raises granted to other coaches, and she was told she was being fired for violated unwritten policy despite colleagues not receiving the same treatment for similar acts. Like you said, the Major Applewhite situation, he was only reprimanded of his salary by a month, and then he was brought back to the team. So considering that, do you think Bev Kearney, with the situation she went through with her having to retire instead of, she was necessarily forced to be, she was almost about to be fired. She was basically forced into retirement, and along with the Major Applewhite situation, do you think Bev Kearney was treated unfairly here?
Yeah, when you compare the two stories together, definitely. I mean, obviously, football is the biggest sport at UT, but it's kind of ridiculous and unfair that Major Applewhite just got let off so easily because of what he did. I think it's ridiculous. Same thing with Case McCoy and Jordan Hicks' allegations against them about the time of the Alamo Bowl. Those guys didn't get too much penalty, and Bev Kearney, for a similar situation, it's not like she didn't do anything wrong, but it's kind of strange to see her fired, especially with all the success she brought to the program. But it definitely shows whether you think it's fair or not. I mean, it's definitely not fair, but obviously Texas football is the big deal here. But yeah, if you compare the two stories together, it definitely looks like Bev Kearney got let go without much say, really, and unfairly, in my opinion.
What do you think, Brad? Corey, I'm sorry.
I agree with him. Football is pretty much the University of Texas sports, whether you like it or not, whether they're good or not. Most of the publicity is going to come down to that. So they want to keep, the track record, no pun intended, for the football team to be on a positive note. And I'm not saying track does not matter, but in the eyes of sports fans and the media and UT public relations, it may not matter as much. Right. So I think it's very interesting to see where this is going. We'll have to see how it plays out.
The broadcast advisor, his office is down the hallway from KVRX. He has one message to all the people at KVRX and to watch out what kind of content they put on their CP shows. And there's one quote that really sticks with me. He says, the University of Texas relies on 3 things: image, image, and image. This is going to bring down their situation, their image, big time, regardless of who comes out the winner, if we can say that there is a real winner. Coming up next, Sheldon McClellan is transferring? Say it ain't so. Well, yes, it is. It is possible that Sheldon McClellan is leaving the University of Texas and off to a different school. We're also talking NBA and NHL teams. The Heat streak stops at 27, the second longest winning streak in North American professional sports. We'll preview the Major League Baseball upcoming season, as well as the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8. Coming up next, we're going to take breaks for PSAs and KVRX promos, so stay tuned. Back on Around the Huddle. Around the Huddle, KVRX at gmail.com is the email address. Around the Huddle, KVRX at gmail.com. Thank you for tuning in. You have just tuned into the first dozen minutes of Around the Huddle. If you missed the first 10 minutes, we just talked about the Bev Kearney controversy where she filed a complaint with the Texas Workforce Commission, and there's a possibility that within 6 months, the TWC can give her the right to sue either the athletics department or the university. Either way, it's not a good image display of the University of Texas. Alongside Brad Kellner and guest host Corey Schneider, I'm Blake Carter. Now let's talk a little bit more about men's basketball. Their season is well over, and one player is on his way out.
Yeah, Sheldon McClellan. He actually becomes the second UT player who has said that they're going to transfer, joining Jalen Bond. But yeah, Texas guard Sheldon McClellan's decided to transfer. The team went 16-18 in 2012-2013. Now, we've talked about the team's struggles numerous times on the air, and a first-round exit in the CBI to the University of Houston. It was just a brutal year, but more tragedy, I guess, if you will. McClellan was second leading scorer on the team. He averaged 13.5 points a game, but numerous times this season he clashed with Rick Barnes, and he joins Jalen Bond as the two UT players that's transferring. And Mike Kabongo, rumors have it that he might be leaving early to the NBA. We've discussed that as well. He hasn't made his final decision yet, but could look completely different next year. And I really don't blame him for transferring. Sheldon McClellan, that is. He's one of Texas's best players, and he came off the bench the entire season. There were games where he played just 1 minute. I've read around and seen that his attitude isn't the greatest, but right. I would have a pretty bad attitude too if I was coming off the bench as the team's second leading scorer. McClellan had some big games. He had 15 games in which he scored 15 or more points. That raised his points per game average, but he had 2 games where he played just 1 minute. Second leading scorer playing 1 minute. I mean, do you hear about that kind of stuff often? That's at TCU and at Iowa State, and then only 7 at Oklahoma State. So, wow. 2 questions for you guys. What do you think of McClellan's decision to transfer, and how does his decision affect the Longhorns in the future?
We'll start with you, Corey.
Well, like you said, this man is a superior athlete, and I can't blame him wanting to transfer with the performance. There's been a lot of attitude problems recently on this team. Julian Lewis also rumored to leave recently, so all the absences from arguably the 4 out of the 5 best players on the team could make it likely to, I hate to say it, but could be a CBI repeat for the next year. I said the future was bright for Texas basketball earlier in the season, but I'm not so sure now.
Right.
It seems to be like there's always potential for Texas basketball, but that potential can never really get developed, whether it's tension on the team or just picking too good of players that go to the NBA before they can really contribute to the team's success. So it's really, I guess it's great that these players want to do the best they can. It's really unfortunate for Texas basketball, though.
It's been a frustrating season overall. It's the first frustrating season that most Texas fans have felt in 15 years. It's the first time they missed the big tournament, and they've been successful in the tournament several years off and on, but over the past several years they started to decline. They really couldn't get past the second or third round necessarily. So I saw this coming at least this season, not these people transferring. I would think they would be stronger than that. But I do see their frustration, and I do see why they are doing it. It's because they're not happy with their team's performance. And if you're not happy with your team's performance, would you want to stick another year, even if you had Mike Kabongo back with a full year? I think Mike Kabongo was the leading scorer, even though he came back in the middle of February, and Sheldon McClellan was the second highest to score in that.
To Kabongo.
So Sheldon McClellan is a big-time player for this team, and he basically stuck it out for the entire season, and Mike Kabongo was absent for halfway through it. So Sheldon McClellan leading, it's not looking good for the Texas basketball program right now.
What do you guys think about Rick Barnes? Blake, you and I have talked on the show previously. We said that although this is his first year as a head coach at UT, that he hasn't reached the NCAA tournament, we said he deserves another chance, at least one more year to help turn this program around. But now you see players leaving that have been feuding with Coach Barnes all year long. Do you think now he deserves another chance? I mean, Texas' best players are either leaving early for the NBA or transferring. That's not what you want to see when the future for this program already looks bleak. So what's both of y'all's opinions now on Rick Barnes? Does he deserve another year? Is it time for him to leave?
I'm torn between this decision. Honestly, right now there are a lot of people that you would never expect to go against Rick Barnes, wanting him to leave just because of, like they said, all these controversies that are occurring and the losses. And it was just a frustrating season. They really seemed that they could not correct their mistakes, and that may be partially coaching, maybe attitudes, maybe skill level. But regardless, you have to question how long he's going to be here, if at all, for the next year. I say they give him another chance, and if they can't perform next year, he's gone.
If he went to the NCAA tournament, would we still be questioning whether Rick Barnes would have his job back? I don't think so.
I don't think players would be transferring if we were at the NCAA tournament.
We were talking about this last week. We would say that I basically predicted that the Texas Longhorns would make the tournament next year. But you see Sheldon McClellan transferring. You see all these different players. Julian Lewis, it's possible that he might be transferring along with Sheldon McClellan, of course, to a different school, possibly, but that's beyond the point. The point here is to think that Rick Barnes right now has his back up against the wall. He has the worst season he has in his career at Texas. He was once a Final Four, and 10 years later, he's not even making the NCAA tournament. He's losing a one-pointer in the CBI tournament to Houston. Now he's in the offseason figuring out, what the hell am I going to do with this Texas Longhorns basketball team to try to get back at least into shape for the season when it comes around in October or November. That's the main concern that Rick Barnes has, is just trying to make sure that they get through the offseason. It's not going to be a perfect offseason, and it's not going to be easy either, but you got to transition through it well. You're listening to KVRX Austin. This is Around the Huddle, 17 minutes into the show. We just talked about the Bev Kearney controversy at the top of the hour and Sheldon McClellan transferring along with a few other basketball players on the men's squad. Around the Huddle, KVRX at gmail.com. That's Around the Huddle, KVRX at gmail.com. I haven't gotten a confirmation email from Mark yet, but if he doesn't send me an email within the next 30 minutes, we'll give away those lacrosse tickets, I guess.
Yeah, good one.
All right,
I'll be too happy about that one.
All right, let's go now to Texas sports. We're going to highlight a few games for you. Texas hasn't done so well. Last time we left you, they were playing the Texas Tech Red Raiders in the middle of the week. Actually, they were playing them on a weekend, and they lost 2 straight. They lost the final game. It was a rubber match against the Red Raiders, 4-2 on Sunday. Actually, that was 3/15/16/17. That was a while ago. So they were at the University of Houston in the middle of last week, and then they are at Minnesota this previous weekend. They won that series, but it didn't look easy. The first game they dropped by a score of 5-1. Tom Whittle just went crazy on these guys. They struck out a dozen batters and did not allow a walk in that game, and the Texas Longhorns couldn't get anything done until the 8th inning. They scored their only run of the game. So that was 5-1 on the Friday. On Saturday, they got a 10th inning victory thanks to Alex Silver. He recorded 3 hits and 3 RBIs, including 1 in the 10th. That would snap the Longhorns' then 3-game losing streak. Corey Nebel also threw 2 no-hit innings with 3 strikeouts to get the win for the Longhorns. That was the Saturday game. And then the rubber match, Texas Longhorns came away with this one by the final of 6-3. Weston Hall went 3 for 5 with a double and 2 RBI on Sunday, while Brooks Marlowe, he went 3 for 4 as Texas wins the series against Minnesota. Now they're coming back home. They register a 5-3 victory over Texas State. It was again Alex Silver. He breaks the tie with an RBI single in the 6th. It was tied at 3. But Corey Nebel also picks up his 5th save to make sure the Texas Longhorns get their 3rd consecutive victory. So they lost 3. Now they've won 3. They're coming back home for their first Big 12 series since Texas Tech back in the middle of March. So they're at Oklahoma State. We've already seen Texas. They started off really well, but since then they've not transitioned well. They've had losing streaks of 4 straight, and they've lost 4 or 5, but now they've won 3 straight. You guys, I'm just going to ask you, what can they do against the Oklahoma State Cowboys this weekend to make sure that they stay on top?
Well, they need to continue conference play on the right foot. It's still a young season, conference play just beginning. This Texas baseball team did not make the tournament for the first time in a long time last season, and it hasn't been the best start to the season that Coach Augie Garrido and the Longhorns wanted. This team was ranked in the top 25 to begin the year. They've fallen out, and they were hovering around 500 for a while, but now they're a few games over. Texas really needs to just step it up. I mean, they're playing well with that 3-game winning streak, getting contributions from Alex Silver, and the bullpen has been lights out. But the Longhorns, they got to get back to postseason baseball. That's what Augie Garrido has been. I mean, Texas, one of the most historically famous college baseball programs in Division I history. So this team needs to get back to its winning ways, and I think Oklahoma State is a good team to beat. They're a good team to play, but Texas was projected to finish in the Big 12 higher than them this season, so should be at least 2 out of 3 for the Longhorns, in my opinion.
I was going to say the same thing. Texas baseball, just like Texas basketball, has not been on the same positive note it has been in past years. You know, Texas is known to be this great program, but at the same time, Texas baseball has a lot more potential than Texas basketball did. Texas basketball was not really expected to have that great of a season after injuries and allegations and whatnot. But I think the baseball has a lot of time and a lot of talent to turn things around. So I think it's too early to tell, what's going to happen. They're 1-2 in conference right now, but I could see them having a winning record and still making progress in the upcoming years. So
they're struggling a little bit, but they're getting back on their feet. They've won 3 straight after having streaks of losing 4 in a row and then losing 4 or 5, which was just happened. Now we go over to softball. They're faring a little better.
Yeah,
overall.
They're not struggling too much. Your Texas Longhorns softball team is actually currently playing in Lawrence right now in a first of a 3-game series against the Kansas Jayhawks. The Horns began conference play this past week with a home-and-home series against 18th ranked Baylor. Texas is ranked number 9 in the country right now. The games were on Saturday and Sunday. Texas won both to improve to 29-4 on the season. 29-4, how about that? And 2-0 in Big 12 play. Texas won Saturday's game in Waco 4-0 in extra innings. UT put up 4 runs in the top of the 9th to break a scoreless tie and to beat the Lady Bears. Taylor Thom had a bases-loaded RBI single, giving Texas a 1-0 lead, which was followed up by Kim Bruin's 2-run double to extend the lead to 3, and then an error on Baylor catcher Claire Hosack let the 4th run come across. But the big story of the game, Blair Luna. the Texas ace. She pitched a complete game, two-hitter. Two-hitter. They normally play 7 innings. She went all 9. Baylor's first hit didn't even come until the 8th inning. How about that? She had a no-hitter for her full softball game. 14 strikeouts as well for Luna. Truly an amazing performance. And then on Sunday, the Longhorns just needed 7 innings to take down Baylor. 5-1 the final score of that game was in Austin. The Bears went up 1-0, but UT responded in the 5th inning with 2 runs and then added 3 more insurance runs in the bottom of the 6th. Luna, again, how about that? She pitched back-to-back days for the Longhorns. She improved her record to 16-1 on the young season. Truly remarkable stuff. Taylor Thom had an RBI to tie the game. And once again, Kim Bruins, the senior, came up big. She gave Texas the lead with an RBI single. And then Bruins added another RBI in the 6th as well to push the lead to 3-1. So Texas softball has been absolutely phenomenal. I mean, 29-4, that does all the talking. The Longhorns really hope to continue their success in Lawrence this weekend. And Big 12 conference play. They got big games coming up against OU. OU's ranked in the top 3 of the country. So what do you guys think of this softball team's performance so far?
Hopefully they won't be as strenuous as they were on themselves against Arizona State a while back, because they were shut out in that game. They really didn't allow themselves to try to take the lead. Them coming up against Oklahoma, it's not as well-rounded a program as Arizona State overall, but I think with a win over the Oklahoma Sooners, will definitely put themselves over the map in the Big 12 and really solidify themselves for this season. They're a good program, but they need to really solidify themselves with a key win. Could have had that against Arizona State. They might have that against Oklahoma.
Oh, I'm very optimistic about this team. You know, hometown hero Blair Luna is doing phenomenal things, and I think it's really unfortunate that Texas softball does not get the attention that other sports, baseball does, because they're in the top 10 of the country for a good reason. You know, 29-4, they're doing phenomenal things. I think they can easily reach the top 5 by the end of the year. I mean, they're just a very strong offensive team.
Mm-hmm. Women's teams, softball and volleyball, have really been the best 2 athletic programs for UT this year, and a down year for all the men's teams. But yeah, it's hard to look past what the softball team is doing, and if you haven't been looking out for them, take a good look, because this team is performing at the highest of levels right now.
Around the Huddle, KVRX at gmail.com is our email address. Send us an email. We just got an email from Mark,
there it is.
But he didn't confirm his tickets. Although he did send us an email concerning who was in your Final Four, who's your Final Four to begin with, who is it now. We'll answer that question when we get there. It's going to be at the end of our show. Around the end of our show, we're going to preview the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8. Not for the Final Four yet. They'll take a week off, and then next Saturday and Monday they'll play the Final Four and National Championship games. Let's switch now to the NBA, where the Houston Rockets, they were kind of struggling against the Indiana Pacers last night. But before we get to that, we'll preview the other games that they played against. They had a 6-game home stand that started on March 13th. And it ended on March 24th against the San Antonio Spurs. They beat Cleveland on last Friday, 116-78. James Harden led with 20 points. Greg Smith led with 13 rebounds. Jeremy Lin, 6 assists. San Antonio, they squeaked by them. It was the first victory they had against the Spurs this season, winning 96-95. Harden, once again, the leading scorer with 29 points. Omer Asik, 14 points. And James Harden, once again, had 6 assists to lead the Houston Rockets. They had their game against Indiana. Once again, it was here at home. 191 is the loss, but the Indiana Pacers are a well-rounded program. The Rockets lose 100-91, and for them to be in the 7th seed in the Western Conference, you really don't want to lose as many games. They didn't get off to a really good start as well. They started off the game at the end of the first quarter trailing the Pacers 35-19. For James Harden, he had 22 points again, another solid night. It led all players in both teams, with the exception of Roy Hibbert, who had 28 points. Also, James Harden played this game for 43 minutes. Jeremy Lin had 4 assists, and James Harden had 8 assists for himself. So the Houston Rockets are currently in the 7th seed, and we were talking before this show about how the Lakers could possibly have a second half, comeback, and they could possibly be in the playoffs, possibly squeak in as an 8th seed or 7th seed. Houston has... Last year, they had a real problem trying to stay in the playoffs, trying to stay in the playoff hunt, because those last 10 games were basically hell on earth. They lost 8 of 10 or something like that. Either way, they still didn't make the playoffs, even when they had a good chance. So I'll ask you guys, what does Houston need to do now, considering that, besides winning these ball games, which is obvious at this point, what do these Houston Rockets need to do to stay in the playoff mix?
I think they're doing fine right now, honestly. Houston's doing very well. The win against San Antonio was huge because right now that's the first-round matchup. If the season ended today, it'd be Spurs-Rockets. That gave Houston a little bit of confidence going in. James Harden, the huge shot with just over 4 seconds to go, turned out to be the game winner. But the Rockets, they're actually tied in the loss column with Golden State at the 6th seed, so Houston can actually move up. They're closer to Golden State than they are to the Lakers. So I think Houston will be securely in the playoffs unless they have a total collapse, even worse than last season. But the Rockets are playing much better. They were just 9 games over 500 for the first time all season, so they've been playing their best basketball. And I really think they'll get back on track, and maybe they can make a run at that 6th seed because they've played Golden State very well this year.
Meanwhile, for the San Antonio Spurs, they wrapped up their games. They had Utah on Friday, 104-97 was the final. Tony Parker led with 22 points. Tim Duncan, 16 boards, and both Parker and Duncan combined for 5 points each. They were at Houston. They lost 96-95 in that game. Tony Parker led all Spurs with 23 points. He also led with 7 assists. Tim Duncan with 7 boards. Then they came back home against the Denver Nuggets. Big game against Denver. Tim Duncan led with 23 points. And also had a double-double with points and boards, 23 and 14. Tony Parker with 11 assists. They win that game, a very crucial game, 100-99. Denver is a hot team right now. If we remember, if most of us can remember that the Miami Heat, while they had their streak, the Denver Nuggets had their own little streak of themselves. So I'm going to ask you guys, specifically Brad, for the San Antonio Spurs, it was a crucial win against Denver last night. So where do they go from here? Obviously, they're the first seed in the Western Conference. When they get to the postseason, what do they have to do to avoid getting run over or basically upset by teams like Denver or Houston or possibly Los Angeles if they get there?
Yeah, well, the Spurs had a 2-0 lead in the Western Conference Finals, then lost the next 4 to Oklahoma City last year. But this team's the best in the West for a reason. They've been playing very well. They got a lot of veteran experience, obviously, with Parker, Ginobili, and Duncan. And Danny Green, he was unbelievable against Denver. I think he was 6 of 7 from 3 at the end of the first half. So this Spurs team is very good. They're going to be a force to be reckoned with. And, boy, Denver's a tough matchup for anybody right now. That team is young. That team is fast. But a thing that they don't have, and it plagued them last night against the Spurs, they don't have really a go-to guy. I mean, they got a lot of scorers, Andre Iguodala, Danilo Gallinari. But last night they were down by 1, had a chance to hit the buzzer beater, and they looked a little stagnant offensively, so they weren't able to get the win. But I think the Spurs should be fine to get at least to the Western Conference Finals. But once again, I see another OKC-San Antonio matchup to play Miami in the finals.
Well, I was going to say, it's not necessarily on a Heat magnitude. It's not necessarily like a 27-game win streak, but they have been on fire for the majority of the season.
Absolutely.
So I think one thing to look out for is just if they get off their groove and stay off their groove, they will be in trouble. And that's not likely to happen. However, if they lose emotional composure, if they lose chemistry for some reason, that could be a real detrimental thing for the Spurs.
Yeah, it's for the Spurs.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. The Spurs have a lot of veteran leaders, and they performed pretty well in the playoffs in the past, but yeah, no, they've choked the last couple of years. They've been the number 1 or 2 seeds a lot of times. A couple of years ago, if y'all recall, they lost to the 8 seed Memphis. Yeah. And last year, once again, being up 2-0 and then losing the next 4 to Oklahoma City. But they should get to at least to the Western Conference Finals, and obviously they'll be the favorites if they're the number 1 seed. But you never know what you're going to get out of the Spurs. Sometimes they look like a team of 20-year-olds, and then sometimes their age really shows up, and they look like they're not there, and some of the faster teams in the league can get ahead of them.
Around the Huddle, KVRX@gmail.com is the email address. Questions, comments, concerns, how we can improve on our shows, and questions can be read live on the air. We just had an email from Mark. We'll read that in just a second. Let's go now to the Metroplex. Mavericks and Stars, how their weeks go.
Yeah, Dallas Mavs had a great week. They went 3-0, beginning with a win, 104-94 over the Boston Celtics. Jet Terry's return to the Metroplex, he had a standing ovation. Unlike Lamar Odom, but we'll get to that in a second. Brandon Wright actually led the Mavs with 23 points. He had a great game, 11 of 16 from the field. Dirk had 22 as well. And Vince Carter, who's been phenomenal, had a 19 off the bench for the Mavs. And then Dallas played a crucial game against the team that's currently in 9th. Against Utah, the Mavs got a 113-108 victory over the Jazz. Big third quarter, the Mavs outscored Utah by 11 to get the win. And both of the teams had the same record after that. For Dallas, just even distribution. 7 guys, in double figures for Dallas. And Mike James actually led the way with 19 points for the Mavs. Dallas shot 54% from the field, 9 of 18 as well from beyond the arc, and 28 of 33 from the free throw line. All great stats, all crucial. to get victories. And then 109-102, the overtime win against the Los Angeles Clippers a couple days ago. Unbelievable game.
Yep.
Nationally televised, the Mavs look good. That was to get to one game under 500 where Dallas currently stands. Boy, Dirk looked like the Dirk of old. 33 points, his season high. The Mavs were just great. Every time it looked like LA was running away with the game, Dallas came back. O.J. Mayo hit the shot nearly at the buzzer to send the game into overtime, and then the Blake Griffin push-off. Very fortunate because he hit a circus shot at the end of that game. But in overtime, it was all Dallas. A big, huge win against one of the Western Conference best. It was actually the Mavs' first win against one of the top 4 Western Conference teams this season. Dallas plays, actually they're about to tip off tonight in the Metroplex AAC against the Indiana Pacers. If the Mavs win, they'll be 500, and that means it's time to bring out the Barbasol and the razors, because it's been a long time. The no-shave pledge that the Mavs made. Dirk looks like a caveman right now. A lot of Mavs fans across the Metroplex, across the world, have been keeping their beards. Corey?
Yeah, I was going to say I'd love to see Dirk shave his beard. You have no idea what's living in there right now. Indiana in Dallas right now. Pacers are without star forward Danny Granger, but the Pacers are still a strong team. I'd love to see the beard shaven greatly. Alec Reifer would appreciate that.
Yeah.
Dallas actually favored to win this game on the odds. Let's hope Vegas is right.
Yep.
Playoffs are very possible right now. I didn't think I'd say that.
Nobody did.
But it didn't look like that a couple weeks ago, but one game behind the 8th seed Lakers is very possible to overcome. The big game between LA and Dallas is next Tuesday, so we'll have to see how that goes. And after that, the Mavs are almost smooth sailing. They face beatable teams like the Hornets, Suns, and Trailblazers, all behind them in the Western Conference. So all you need is the Lakers to go even 4-4 over the next 8 games, and I mean, Dallas is in.
Mavs control their own destiny. I mean, basically, if they do their thing, they win, they'll be fine. Utah, interesting stat. If the Mavs, Lakers, and Jazz tie for the 8th seed, Utah has the tiebreaker over both of the teams. So Dallas needs to win outright in order to get into the playoffs.
Mavericks were under 500 basically all of this year, and for them to possibly get back to hump is something detrimental to their season and their postseason hopes, considering that they are 2 years removed from their NBA championship.
It feels like a championship.
By the way, Dirk Nowitzki, there are some advantages to having a beard. You know, you could sell car insurance with that thing. Let's go now to Around the Huddle. You got it. Around the Huddle, KVRX@gmail.com is our email address. That one email was from Mark. Mark, congratulations. Happy 50th birthday. You're going to Philadelphia with your son, Brad.
You're going to Disney World.
Not exactly.
Not
you're going to Philadelphia, and you're going to watch some lacrosse. It's NCAA, right?
NCAA.
It's the national championship.
All
How
right.
about that? Let's talk now real quickly. We're going to go into an MLB preview for the upcoming 2013 season. We have the Easter Sunday night opener between the Texas Rangers and the Houston Astros down in Space City. It's going to be very exciting. 2013 is a new start for the Houston Astros. They are in a new division. But first, let's talk about the Heat. Their streak stopped last night at 27. LeBron James had a good game. Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade, they all showed up. They all scored at least 18 points. But Luol Deng had the performance of the game. He had 28 points, had 7 rebounds, and 8 assists. So 5 assists for the Chicago Bulls. That stopped the streak at 27. So I'm going to ask you guys, obviously, after 27 games, after winning 27 games in a row, you kind of feel a different vibe losing the possible 28th straight game. So I'm going to ask you guys, what's in the Heat's minds right now?
It's one game to them. I mean, they're 27-1 over the last 28. That's not too shabby. It's not the playoffs. Obviously, Miami's shown that they could turn it on at any time. They increased their Eastern Conference lead by 12.5 games over this streak. So they're smooth sailing. They easily are going to clinch the top seed in the Eastern Conference very soon. It's no big deal to them. Miami's the best team in basketball. They've really proved it. They almost went 2 months without losing a game. Are you kidding me? The last loss was February 1st. They only had 2 more games in the month of March to try to win out. But a big win for Chicago. Without Derrick Rose, without Joakim Noah able to get the victory. But to Miami, it means nothing. I mean, 56-15 on the year. Yeah, I'm sure they're so upset about one little loss.
Yeah, for them to lose this one game out of basically 2 months, it's kind of staggering to finally get back on your losing ways. I know I was sad when the Houston Rockets lost after winning 22 straight. The problem was they lost big time to Boston. It was like a 98-78 game. It wasn't even close. You have any thoughts, Corey?
Yeah, well, I think this could be good for the team because this question was asked on ESPN a couple weeks ago when the streak was in its early stages. But if they got rocked in the playoffs or if they got upset, that could be really startling for them. I know they're a very professional team. They do a great job with their chemistry. But right now they understand what a loss is like. They almost don't even remember what that's like, I know. But A reality check is never bad. They're good, but they're not that good. They are beatable. They're an NBA team. Right. And on ESPN last night, they called the new Heinrich maneuver when Kirk Heinrich basically tackled LeBron James. And as silly as that may sound, that is what they had to do. They had to rattle LeBron James.
They got in Miami's head.
They had to be real aggressive because once LeBron and that whole team gets momentum, they're gone, especially on the fast break. So the Bulls did what they had to do and got the W in Chicago still without Derrick Rose.
LeBron was very critical of the tenacity that the Chicago Bulls played last night. They almost had the lead going into the third quarter, but the fourth quarter it was all Chicago. Speaking of the Bulls, what are their chances now because they're in the Eastern Conference and they just beat the Miami Heat to stop their major winning streak? They're 6th seed in the conference. What are their chances of how far they'll go into the postseason, without Derrick Rose?
Well, if Derrick Rose comes back and he stops being a little baby, then maybe they have a chance. He's been cleared to play by doctors, and he won't come back. Yeah, he's not emotionally ready. But no, without D Rose, this team is. I think right now they're scheduled to match up against the New York Knicks. I don't think this team has the talent to beat New York, but if they do, they're not going to get to Miami because Miami will be on the opposite side of the Eastern Conference playoff bracket. But without D Rose, this is just an average team. It's a 6-seed team. Tom Thibodeau is one of the best coaches, if not the best coach in the league. He's done a lot with this shorthanded Chicago Bulls team that a lot of people didn't even think would make the playoffs. So it's pretty impressive what the Bulls have done, but they're not going far in the postseason.
I agree. But if Derrick Rose does come back, we have to look out for the opportunity because he really never. He was supposed to come back 2 weeks ago,
right.
And he's on his own schedule right now. Even if he does come back, you'll have to wonder how he's going to mesh with this team he hasn't played with since last year. So. Yeah, I don't see them getting far unless there is a Cinderella moment. So
remember the last time the Derrick Rose played, he injured himself in the postseason against the 76ers.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So if he comes back against any of these teams remaining in the schedule and comes back for the eventual postseason, he's going to be hot. He's going to be very, very angry that he missed the entire postseason and most of this regular season. Once again, our email address is aroundthehuddlekvrx@gmail.com, aroundthehuddlekvrx@gmail.com, with the baseball season coming up on Sunday night. I want you to like that. A Sunday night matinee with 2 Texas teams, the Rangers and the Astros, getting it on in Houston for the first game of the season. It's an Easter Sunday night baseball special.
Corey and I will both be there. So.
Section 408, way up there in the nosebleeds.
Yeah, those are definitely nosebleeds. I hate those nosebleeds. I went there for a Phillies game, and it wasn't even a crowded stadium. But anyways, speaking of the Houston Astros and the Phillies, now they can't play anymore on a regular basis. The Astros are now moving away to the AL West. Let's go ahead and start our MLB preview.
Sorry for them.
We'll start in the American League. We'll go in this order. We'll go East, North, and West for both the American League and National League. Let's start out with the AL East. The Yankees are obviously, they're getting old. Derek Jeter was supposed to be cleared for opening day, but it doesn't look like he's ready. Mariano Rivera entering his last year as the saver of Major League Baseball. And then we have all these players, Jose Reyes, R.A. Dickey, headed to Toronto. And the Boston Red Sox are kind of a murky puddle at this point. Where do you see who's going to be the winner of this division? Corey, I'll start with you.
Okay, so I'm going to start with the West right now, and I hate to say it, I really do, but the Angels are a powerhouse right now.
Gotcha.
So I have them winning the AL West. It's going to be a close race for the Rangers. They're still not a bad team. Obviously they're going to be bitter over the past 3 years, but they lost some crucial players. So that'll be an interesting matchup, but I do see LA coming out on top. In the AL Central, Tigers also a powerhouse. Miguel Cabrera, Prince Fielder, detrimental combination. So I say they're going to have the top 3 best records, possibly the best record in the AL. AL East, most people have said Blue Jays. Most people have Yankees second or third. I say the Rays. The Rays are going to come in first. The Rays actually play in Toronto for the final series of the season. I think that series will determine the winner. I say Rays to take 2 of 3 from the Rays in Toronto at the end of the season to take the pennant. NL West, San Francisco Giants, obviously coming off a huge victory at the end of October, beginning of November. NL Central, Cincinnati Reds, Joey Votto, just a monster over there at first base and at the plate. NL East, Nationals, Bryce Harper, Adam LaRoche, absolutely destructive. Bryce Harper had a great season for a rookie. It was not necessarily fantastic by any means, but this season he is expected to do tremendous things. He's now batting in the 3rd spot for the Nationals, and that's an RBI spot. He has the power to do it. He has the discipline, and so I say we're gonna talk about MVPs later, but I say that man is someone to look out for.
Definitely. I'll go ahead and give my picks for the AL East. I'll just go ahead and give the division winners. For the American League East, I'll go ahead and pick Toronto as a perennial favorite. They just have a powerhouse. Like you said, the Angels are the favorites in the American League West. I picked them in the West for the same reason, and the Tigers as well for the same particular thing, because Justin Verlander and you have Prince Fielder as well, and Miguel Cabrera coming off his Triple Crown year. They're going to be hot and excited, ready to defend their American League championship crown. Over in the National League, I'll go ahead for the NL East once again. I think we're basically unanimous. The Washington Nationals, I'll pick them as well. Steven Strasburg, hopefully he won't be as limited as he was last year, because he's a few years off of his, Tommy John surgery?
Right.
So he'll definitely be hot and ready for the season. For the National League Central, I will pick the St. Louis Cardinals. I think they're one of the better teams overall. What?
No, they're good. I just don't like them because, obviously, of the
Game 6.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'll just say
Nelson, I'm still watching.
I'll just say St. Louis. Let's move on. For the NL West, I'll go ahead and pick Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Dodgers, to win the NL West. They have a very good program there. What do you think, Brad?
Yeah, for me, I'll start with the American League. AL West, I hate to pick the Angels, but I really do. I think Texas missed its opportunity last year by not winning the division when the Angels didn't.
Yep.
But with Josh Hamilton, I mean, this lineup was already stacked. And the pitching is weak out in L.A., outside of Jared Weaver, in my opinion. You never know what you're going to get out of C.J. Wilson, the straight-edge racer. But L.A. Angels of Anaheim of California of the U.S. are going to win that one. And the Rangers, I think, will get the first wild card like this past year. This team has a lot of talent. Nelson Cruz and Ian Kinsler, those are the two X factors for the Rangers. Both those guys struggled last year, and whether Nelson Cruz gets suspended is also a huge, huge factor for Texas. But Yu Darvish and Matt Harrison at the top of the rotation, I think this team is too good not to make the playoffs. For the AL Central, Detroit Tigers, I think they'll have the best record in the American League. They got to be the favorites after winning the AL last season. They have the same roster, plus Victor Martinez is coming back. He missed the entire year last year. 2 years ago, he had an unbelievable season, hit over 300. A lot of power as well, hitting in that 5 spot. Can't count out a team with Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer, Rick Porcello, Doug Fister. I mean, that rotation is stacked. And then in the AL East, that's the biggest toss-up to me. Right now I have the Blue Jays. I don't even like my own pick. I'll probably change it before the season begins, but with all the offseason acquisitions, this team was already good last year. Don't forget about Jose Bautista when you get caught up in the new additions. But this team has a very good lineup and a very good pitching rotation. The second wild card, I see Tampa Bay taking that. They're just too stacked pitching-wise. And the lineup, I think, will be just good enough to sneak into October baseball. For the National League, I see the Giants taking the West again. I don't see them repeating as World Series champs, but we'll get to that in a second. I think the Dodgers will take the second wild card spot in the NL as well. The NL Central, I have the Cincinnati Reds. Too much talent. Johnny Cueto, Matt Latos anchoring the front end, or Aroldis Chapman, whether he stays at closer or he moves into the starting rotation. They got a great pitching staff there. Obviously, Joey Votto and Jay Bruce in the middle of that lineup. That'll strike fear in any opponent. In the National League East, I think the Washington Nationals will have the best record, the top seed in the playoffs. Unbelievable lineup. The rotation is stacked. A lot of young players, and boy, from top to bottom, this team looks phenomenal. And then I think the Braves will get the first wild card with both the Upton brothers. Maybe Kate Upton, if they can sneak her in before the deadline.
Hopefully.
And then Jason Hayward. I mean, it's the first year without Chipper Jones in Atlanta, but this team is too talented. I think they actually could end up with the second best record in the National League, but because I think Washington will finish ahead of them, they'll end up being a wild card slot. But those are my postseason picks. Who do you guys have for... I guess we'll do MVPs and Cy Young. So who are y'all's picks for the AL and NL?
I'll go ahead and pick for the American League. I'll go ahead and pick Mike Trout. He's probably one of the better rookie years I've ever seen out of any sort of player. Bryce Harper, and it seems like this was the year for the rookie. We have Bryce Harper, Mike Trout, and in the NFL we had Russell Wilson, Robert Griffin III, and Andrew Luck. They just performed so well, and especially in their first year. So I'll pick Mike Trout in the American League. He just basically brought that team from the depths of hell in that division, and Albert Pujols wasn't playing well, even with the big contract. So, and they almost got back to their winning ways. So I'll go ahead and pick Mike Trout as my American League MVP. As for National League, Joey Votto. He'll win 2 or 3. Any of you guys?
I'm going to agree with those two. I think that these guys would be great, even if they weren't rookies or second years. Mike Trout guaranteed to put up huge numbers, maybe not as big as last year, because that's almost impossible.
Right.
In fact, I thought that until the last week of the last year's season, he had the AL MVP. If Miguel Cabrera hadn't earned the Triple Crown, I thought Trout had a realistic shot at MVP.
Right, definitely.
Still does this year. Bryce Harper now hitting the RBI third spot for the Nationals, as mentioned previously. With a team that can produce like the Nationals can, he's going to perform well. That rotation, he's going to get a lot of positive attention. I think is a realistic shot at the NL MVP as well.
Yeah, for me, I got I'll give 2 of each, I guess, for AL MVP. Albert Pujols, he had a terrible start to last season. First 2 months, he was hitting under 200, I think, or just barely over the Mendoza line. But he ended up hitting over 300 with a ton of power numbers. He went on a tear in the second half of the season. And he's won MVPs before. He's too good. And I think Trout won't be quite as good as he was last year. I mean, it'll be hard to be. So I think Pujols will end up carrying that team in the playoffs. Then you got to look at a Detroit Tiger. I don't think Cabrera will repeat, but maybe Prince Fielder has a chance to win it. In the National League, Joey Votto, I mean, he missed a lot of last season, but once again, 2 years ago, he was a National League MVP. Just a ton of power at the first base spot. He's a great defender as well. And then Ryan Braun, you can never count that guy out, but I don't think the Brewers will be good enough for him to win.
One team, real quick. We got to go to a break real quick, but out of you guys, just a quick explanation for one team who's going to be a breakout team that we really didn't expect.
Everyone has, the Yankees as the second or third team in the AL East, but they have 4 All-Stars, possibly Hall of Famers that are out of the lineup right now. So come July, they're going to come real strong, compete with the Angels and the Braves for the best outfield in baseball. So I would look for that strong second half push in the AL East from the Yankees.
Even with the Yankees, with their star-studded lineup, you think they're a bit underestimated this year, even with all... I would agree with that because, they're injury-ridden, and all these teams are basically... they're riding on the New York Yankees and the fact that they're injury-ridden. So I would definitely agree with that.
You have Eric Chavez at third behind Alex Rodriguez. People need to realize what that means. Eric Chavez is a stellar player. He may be getting into his latter years of his career, but he is still a great baseball player. It's not like they have, no one to rely on. They have almost all-stars behind all-stars. So.
Right. You can never count the Yankees out. I completely agree. But outside of CC Sabathia, I just don't see quite enough depth in the pitching rotation to get it done. But once again, you can never count a team like the Yankees out with all the World Series championships. For me, I'd say look out for Kansas City. Look out for the Royals a little bit. They made a big trade to get James Shields. Now, I don't think they're going to flirt with and Santana. I don't think they're going to flirt with the Tigers for the AL Central crown. But for a second wildcard team, Kansas City has a chance. I think they'll finish over 500 and that horrible streak, nearly approaching Pittsburgh for mediocrity with sub-500 seasons. But Kansas City has a lot of young talent, and if those guys can all mesh and click at the same time of the year, I think they can definitely make a push for the second wildcard spot in the AL.
How about the Oakland Athletics? It was kind of a comeback year for them, and they won the division just at the last second. Literally at the last second. I'll pick Oakland to be my special team for this year to possibly make it to not a division, but to division crown their second straight. But I will pick them as a possible wild card in the future.
I'm hoping we don't even get to that last 10-game stretch where they have to make a push.
Either
the Angels or the Rangers, but I can't handle another one of those.
It's brutal. Too many late season.
Can't handle game 6s and can't handle stretches where a team that wasn't supposed to win is winning and the team that's supposed to win is losing. All right, let's take our final break of this hour. When we come back, we're going to preview the Sweet 16. The rest of the teams, we have 2 games underway. Let's go ahead and preview those now. Arizona is playing Ohio State, 38-34. The Wildcats lead at the half, and they're underway in the second half. Just 8 minutes to go in regulation. Marquette is going away against Miami, 51-37. At least I didn't pick either of those teams to go to my Final Four. So we'll preview the rest of the Sweet 16 field as well as pick the teams for those teams are going to win those games and also the Elite Eight. But first, Brad?
And we'll give our World Series predictions right when we come back from the break. I know you guys are amped up to see how wrong we are this season. We'll be right back on Around the Huddle, KVRX.
KVRX is brought to you by sitting right next to the only other person in the movie theater. Trust us, it's meant to be.
Back on Around the Huddle, this is KVRX Austin. Thank you for tuning in for another great night of student-run programming. Brad Kellner, along with guest host Corey Schneider, is in for the booth. If you are looking online at TexasStudentTV.com, I know I'm not, so I'll go ahead and head straight there and see how we're doing. But you are listening to KVRX Austin, and we're streaming online currently on TexasStudentTV.com. I got that on cam too, so you're good. All right. For the final 10 minutes of our show, we're going to preview. Let's go ahead and pick our winners for the World Series because, picking playoff teams and whoever's going to win those series is tedious enough. So we'll go ahead and pick the World Series winners. I'll start with, you want to start, Brad, or your point? I'll go ahead and start. I'll pick Detroit. I don't think they have the best possibility of them repeating as, looking at the field and whoever's in this field, I like the Angels, but the Detroit Tigers, they're just fired up. And the fact that they didn't win the World Series last year, it would have been their first since '84. So the fact that we're looming on the 30-year anniversary of that season, they're going to be playing for something, definitely. I love the Angels, and I love their stacked lineup. But I'm not sure with one season with Hamilton and with Pujols and with Mike Trout that they can get used to that just yet. In the future, maybe a few World Series, but at this point, not yet.
I'm going to have to agree with the fact that Detroit is going to overcome the Angels. That's who I have Detroit over LA in the ALCS, but I have the Nationals over Detroit in the World Series. I think that we are really going to see something special from Bryce Harper and the Nationals.
Right.
Bryce Harper really developing, hitting 6 or 7 last year for the Nationals, and this team is coming together. They were nothing 5 years ago. They were the last seed in the NL East, and now with Steven Strasburg coming back, Adam LaRoche, Bryce Harper, it's a star-studded lineup. So I think Detroit is going to make a very strong push. I see the Nationals over Detroit in 7.
Very, very clutch there. I think the Nationals are going to finish with the best record in baseball. I think they have too much talent not to. I think they might win 100 games, be the only team across the league to do that. But regular season success doesn't always amount to postseason success. I do have the Detroit Tigers, though, winning it all over the Cincinnati Reds. I think the Reds will be able to take down the Nationals in the playoffs. Whether they're a better team is up for debate, but I like Cincinnati. They have a lot of depth in that lineup. We can't say enough about Joey Votto and Jay Bruce. I mean, those two guys carry the team. I just think the rotation in the back end of the bullpen is a little bit better than what Washington has to offer. But Detroit, I have winning it all. I mean, they got to the World Series last year without their third best player in Victor Martinez. Obviously, Justin Verlander, the best pitcher in baseball, in my opinion. And Bruce Rondon, the closer for Detroit, a name to look out for. He's been doing some great things in spring training. This entire Detroit team just has too much talent, and I think they'll get back to the World Series.
So all of 3 of us have at least Detroit in the World Series. 2 of us have them winning the series, and then you have Washington winning the Fall Classic. Those are our picks for the division winners, the ML MVPs, and whoever is going to win the World Series. Let's go now to the NCAA tournament. We have 2 games underway currently in the Sweet 16, Marquette versus Florida. It's a 3-2 matchup. 7:54 to go there. It's 51-37, just as we left off. And it's still at the halftime for Arizona and Ohio State. The Wildcats lead 38-34 against the Ohio State Buckeyes. Those 2 games, let's go ahead and predict those real quick because we only have 5 minutes left. We'll predict these and possible Elite 8 matchups.
Oh, it's hard to predict a game that's 14 points with 7:50 left. But, boy, I had Marquette losing to Davidson. And that looked like a great pick because Davidson was up 6 in the first round with a minute to go, and they choked. So Marquette's killing my bracket, but they look good. Miami's making a little bit of a comeback. But the Golden Eagles, I think, will hold on. Then I have I think Ohio State will come back and beat Arizona, only down by 4 at halftime. Arizona also I had losing in the first round, so I'm really picking against the teams that are hurting my bracket. But I had Miami going to the Elite Eight, but I don't see them coming back. But I think Ohio State's too talented. I think Aaron Kraft will come up big, and Deshaun Thomas will be too much for the Wildcats in the second half.
Yeah, I agree. My bracket was busted after the first round. I had Indiana over Miami in the Final Four. I had Indiana winning it all. I am debating that currently. I think Indiana and Louisville face off in the national championship. Right now, I have Indiana over Syracuse. Obviously, I had Miami winning previously. They're not going to come back from this deficit. Marquette's going to win that one. I think Arizona's going to pull out on top of Ohio State. LaSalle I have over Wichita State. That's a great game right there.
Yep.
Duke and Michigan State, 2 very strong teams. I think Michigan State has been stronger this season. I think Michigan State's going to pull out in front of Coach K's Duke team. Louisville over Oregon, obviously, as previously stated, so I see Indiana over Louisville for the national championship.
Kansas-Michigan is going to be a tough matchup, but I'll still pick the Jayhawks in that one. Louisville over Oregon will be one of my easier picks. We got Michigan State versus Duke. I'll go ahead and take Duke because they're still in my national championship game. Wichita State versus LaSalle. These 2 teams aren't even supposed to be here. It's the only matchup in the Sweet 16 that doesn't have a top 8 team in it. It's Wichita State 9, LaSalle 13. The better team is going to win this one. I think LaSalle State is the better team of those 2. And then Indiana versus Syracuse. I'll go ahead and take Indiana. Once again, they're in my national championship game. Florida versus Florida Gulf Coast. This one's going to be interesting. It's going to be tomorrow night at around 9 o'clock. These 2 teams from the same state of Florida, they're going to be playing at a packed Cowboy Stadium in Arlington. Florida is basically the perennial team. This is the team you want to have when you're going into the NCAA tournament. But for Florida Gulf Coast, however, they've won their first 2 games in the tournament.
You got to respect
it's
what they're doing there.
Absolutely.
It's a lot of fun to watch.
It's their first 2 games in their existence in the NCAA tournament, and their coach, their head coach is. I'll just leave it off the air for comment. So. Yeah, Florida Gulf Coast is a really stacked team, beating both San Diego State and Georgetown, really good programs at this point. So Florida versus Florida Gulf Coast, it may seem like a no-brainer, but I'll let you guys decide on that.
Well, they call themselves Dunk City out in FGCU, but boy, I almost picked Gulf Coast to actually bet my roommate $10 that they would win over Georgetown, but I did not see this one coming. I was too scared to put them in my bracket. I think Florida runs away with this. These 2 teams have similar strategies. They have a ton of athletes on both sides, but Florida is obviously better. I mean, there's a reason why they are seeded 3 and Gulf Coast was 15. I'll go ahead and give the rest of my picks for the Sweet 16 before Corey can make his finals, or Elite 8 picks. But I have Indiana over Syracuse, LaSalle over Wichita State, Louisville over Oregon, Michigan over Kansas. I think Michigan is playing unbelievable basketball right now. They've coasted through the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament. I'm wearing my KU shirt right now, but I think it'll be a tough end of the season tomorrow night in Dallas for the Jayhawks. And then Michigan State I have over Duke, just because I had it in my bracket. Both of those teams are playing pretty well. But Tom Izzo, both coaches, Coach K and Tom Izzo, know how to get it done. But Tom Izzo hasn't been to a Final Four in a long enough time, in my opinion. So, yeah, that's my Elite 8, I guess. But all my Final Four is still intact: Indiana, Ohio State, Michigan, and Michigan State. So my bracket...
It's an all Big Ten.
All Big Ten. You
Four.
called me crazy for doing that at the beginning, but right now it's not looking too shabby.
I actually predicted Indiana over Wisconsin at the beginning. I thought the Big Ten is just a phenomenal basketball conference. So yeah, keep going.
Corey, you got picks for the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8?
The Elite 8. So I think it's really interesting how Florida Gulf Coast, from actually Fort Myers is the actual city that they're located in, for those who don't know. I say Florida Gulf Coast does not overcome Florida, so Florida's winning there. And then Kansas over Florida, Louisville over Oregon, as previously stated. So I said Louisville over Michigan State. You have Syracuse over Indiana, so you have Indiana over Marquette, and then Wichita State over Ohio State. With that said, that brings you to Indiana over Louisville for my prediction for the championship.
All right, for me, I got Louisville versus Duke. I'll take Duke. For Kansas and Florida, I'll go ahead and take the Jayhawks. Indiana is going to face, in my opinion, it's going to be Marquette, but I'll still take Indiana. And Arizona, I think Arizona will finish out this game, and they'll take on Wichita State. I like Wichita State. For them to be a 9 seed and get into the Final Four is going to be something special. Wow. Brad Kellner, great show. Corey Schneider.
Picks real quick. Can I give my Elite 8 picks? You can't skip me, Blake.
All right, fine. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Marquette looks to be run away with this one, but yeah, real quick, I got Indiana over Marquette.
Okay.
Ohio State coming back to win, beating LaSalle. Michigan over Florida, and then Michigan State over Louisville. So a little bit different than what you guys have.
Yeah, definitely. I apologize for skipping ahead of you. Brad, once again, good show. Corey, thanks for coming on as a guest. And that concludes this edition of Around the Huddle. Keep it tuned here to KVRX 91.7. Diana is up next. She's getting ready. I'll play a song for her just so you can get prepared for her show tonight. And thank you for tuning in. Alongside Corey Schneider, I'm Brad Kellner. You're Brad Kellner. I'm Blake Carter. We went through the show entirely. Yeah. Keep it classy, Austin. Thank you for tuning in. This has been Around the Huddle.